All right, and now, and continuing, welcome back, and continuing with our impression of the session, we have with us, joining us, welcome back via phone, Senator Linda Collins-Smith is on the line. Linda, thanks for coming back on.
Thanks, Paul. So glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So we've been doing this. We had a busy day. I mean, yesterday we talked to your colleague, Josh Miller. He gave his impression of the session, and then today we've talked to Senator Gary Stubblefield, Senator Scott Flippo, and now we have the privilege of talking to you. And so feel free, what was your impression of this 2017 session?
Well, I don't know if I'm decompressed yet to let it all sink in. It seemed like we were fighting some bad legislation, and I know there was some good legislation passed, but the fighting of bad legislation can make that legislation better. And it seemed like this session that we were trying very hard. For instance, you look at the issues with our Second Amendment, how much time on one bill that changed so many times that you were supportive in the beginning, you weren't in the end. And it just seemed like we spent a lot of time trying to make bad legislation better. Yeah. And sometimes we didn't win, but we were victorious in some of them and having better legislation. Sometimes that's what you do. You're focusing on things you didn't plan on, but you've got to be willing to jump in when it's necessary.
Yeah,
to make things better.
Yeah, and you know, for sure, I feel like I kind of echo what you just said. We were on defense most of the time. When I say we, I'm talking about people who want, you know, really just the Republican Party platform.
That's right. That's what I said. I guess I'm the platform Republican. I've kind of named it that now. There are those of us that there's a wide range of Republicans, and obviously when you look at the votes, you can see how it has gone. But as a person who believes in that platform, I'm hoping that we can see through the next few months that people can look at how their legislators voted and look at what they voted for and against, and what did they work on. So you're right. We had to work hard this time, and we'll see how it all comes down whenever we start looking at all those votes. Things start coming out. We've got organizations. You look at Conduit, and of course, you is what you do in the media, and I love what you do. I always say I have to hear me some Paul Harrell.
Well,
because
I appreciate that.
I love to hear me Paul Harrell.
Hey, well,
so,
what I appreciate that so much, and you know, I was down there with you a lot because you know, you were on the show a lot. You probably on the show more than anybody because you'd come out of that Senate Judiciary Committee. And you know, and you'd have a lot of great information about what was going on down there, you know, on the ground. Do you think your impression of the session would be that we've got a lot more work to do?
Oh, we have a lot of work to do, a whole lot. I don't know what will happen in our. We've been told we're going to have some special sessions, and you know, I have concerns about that because I'm worried about the tax bills. I'm worried about what's going to happen. We've already seen that of course, news today, you've talked about it. We've known that we have less revenue. The forecast has come out, I think, around $50 million less as of now. And you look at that and you're thinking, okay, we want to, what are we going to do? Because if we're going to pay more taxes just to spend more money, you know, you can always change your budget. How much money do you want to spend? Well, we can raise taxes and have more, and I worry about what we do. And sometimes after the votes all come in, you're going, well, I hope I handled things correctly, but I do worry about the next session because it's already been talked about, special session coming up. And I worried what is it going to be out there for us to vote on with a limited amount of bills, how much pressure legislators are going to feel to vote for certain legislation.
Well, you know, it may be that, you know, as the budget gets worse or the budget shortfall gets worse, if we don't make it up, there'll be more pressure on, I think, a lot of Republicans to go ahead and come in for the special session and, you know, vote for some of those tax increases that they didn't get, like the gas tax increase or like the internet sales tax. Why does the leadership seem to need so much money? I mean, I've been saying that I think we're in a budget crisis or the beginnings of one, because they're asking Republicans to raise taxes. I mean, it just seems strange to me.
Well, it's very concerning for me as a legislator, as a citizen, to sit and hear our Republicans say, it was every corner was a bill to raise taxes. And it was just so much of our session was spent on those items of tax increases. For me, it's very concerning, and it should be for everyone. Because at some point, legislators give in. They start seeing that, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we should do that. And maybe we should go slow. I think we should go very slow before we just raise those taxes. Because you never quit. I mean, they never lower them. For instance, let's talk about the internet sales tax. You and I could maybe agree that if we did taxes on everything and they were lowered, we might also, let's do that and make it even. Everybody knows what they're paying. Everybody's treated the same. You buy something. But if we don't ever lower taxes, that's our problem. We add more things to be taxed. But overall tax decrease.
Yeah, and there were some, Senator Colin Smith, there were some Republicans that would have gotten on board with it if it really would have been not an increase in government. If we would have said, all right, it's going to raise $150 million, let's cut taxes right now by $150 million. Let's pass it into law.
Exactly.
Let's do it. They would have passed the bill. There's no question they would have passed that bill.
That's right, and I think they would have too, and I think that's what concerns me and anyone that's watching the climate is that we don't really lower taxes. We say we lowered some taxes, and then we raise taxes, and that if it's not a net decrease, we're in trouble if we're going to be telling people that. So I'm concerned, and I think the public, I think you hear that when you go out in your district. You just hear all of those things that make sure you go in your district often so that you can go back. And when you vote, remember who you're representing.
Yeah. What are the folks back home in your district saying? Hey, what's your district number? I can't remember, Linda. It's
19.
19.
District 19. And I spoke in my district in Independence County on my way in from Little Rock after the session that was last night. And that's the first thing I've done after session was stop there, go on my way home, and went that direction. And I have to tell you, I'll tell you what their concern is why is our governor supporting policies that are not the platform? And if you don't think that these people at home aren't paying attention, they are. Because they took a chance on Republicans in those past election cycles. And they want to see something different than the same thing they've seen for all those years prior. And counting on us to be different. And if we're not, then why vote Republican? And we don't need a short-lived majority because the platform is right and good. And people have been coming because they believe in our platform more. We've brought attention to what the platform is. And we've seen people say, I'm more like the Republicans, not like the liberals. And then this year, the last couple of sessions, we've just not held to our platform. And the people notice, and they talk about it. And they did last night.
So people in Independence County, they're wondering, hey, why is the leadership taking us down the path that doesn't look very much different than what we voted out of office? It's no question we've gone from at least on the alphabet side, we've gone from a blue state to a red state, but we're not really getting any of those Republican policies.
Exactly, and we know we've got legislators that have passed some, but sometimes we work so hard, and in many of our policies, much of it was killed. It ended. It didn't go anywhere, and it's a shame because we had some good bills presented that would make changes for what we expected in Arkansas with this new leadership, except the leadership didn't go with the folks that were doing those bills that truly fit in our platform. And so much of that legislation died. And I can't say we didn't pass some good legislation. As the days go by and we start winding down and I can actually put those things down on paper, we'll talk about those more. But when you fight bad legislation, and that's much of your time in session, those bills, those are the top bills that keep coming back to everyone. And that's a shame. We fought for our Second Amendment rights in a battle over and over. Think about that. So there's a key platform for our party, our Second Amendment rights. And what about school choice? It went nowhere. It died miserably, just failed. And you look at some of our top platform issues, and they didn't make it.
School choice polls
and
off the charts.
A major majority. Yeah. And we have a major majority. But if you don't think that wasn't the conversation on my first speaking tour that the public was talking about, it was.
Yeah.
And they paid attention.
Man.
And they are much more in tune by listening to shows like yours, which we discussed you last night, because now you have that presence.
I came up. You're saying I came up in the conversation. Tell me how.
You did. Well, because we were talking about how we can keep up. We talked about how they are finding out more about what went on by being in Little Rock at the Capitol while legislation is happening, while we're making laws and talking about it. You have a presence in talk radio now that they've not had. They do have Mountain Talk. They have some of the but they also have now a new show, the Paul Harrell Show. And they're going to be able to get more talk radio, conservative talk radio, and they're thrilled about that. So the more you do and the more you go, like we had Dave Ellswick at the Capitol, we had others, but we had Paul Harrell, and we get that station in our district, and we get to hear your show. That came up. And they said they wanted to make sure they shared that information with the whole system, because now they've got a new way to get the news, the truth, through Paul Harrell Show.
I certainly appreciate that, it's not like I haven't noticed. We've been getting a lot more text messages and communications from the folks in Independence County and in Stone County and in Izard and Baxter and Fulton, and even parts of Sharp, So it's been a great. We really enjoyed getting this affiliate to carry the program, and I certainly hope people see the value in what we've done for the last 11 weeks. But what we're going to continue to do, by just having you on, Linda, or having these other guys on across the state, and giving the constituents access, because a lot of right now that the session's over, the governor and the establishment gets to go to the media and frame everything now that the session's over. And, I hope that we can continue to be the counter voice to a lot of carefully crafted language.
Exactly. And that is what we need. We need you, and we need people to know you're there. We need to share that. And that did come up, how they can say, and I think very important to say, is that you now taking that legislation that passed and sharing it, throughout the next month, allow listeners who couldn't listen just all during those times of the session. They don't know what passed, what didn't pass. They know what happened at the moment. But now sharing some of that legislation and discussing it with the legislators and other organizations, you're able to actually say, hey, this bill did pass. Here's what you've got to look forward to. And it's going to be good or bad, depending. So I think that information you share is critical. And now the listeners can actually know what laws have passed and what they've got to look forward to be in the coming cycle, and how their legislators voted. I remember when you first started, it was always you answer to us. And I can tell you, that matters. It matters, and they need to know how we vote.
Wow. You're bringing up the old answer to us days. Well, those are great days, and I do appreciate it. So Linda, real quick, your colleague, Senator Gary Stubblefield, he did reference, you guys were both on the Judiciary Committee, which was, I think, the makeup of Senate Judiciary was one of the thorns in the side of the establishment, quite frankly. You were the vice chair of Judiciary, but towards the end of the session, there were some more conservative pieces of legislation that I know you wanted to run and others wanted to run, but the chairman, the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, he just kind of quit meeting, so those bills didn't ever, have to go on the governor's desk, and he would have vetoed them likely.
That's right, more than likely. But the people wanted legislation. And like I said, it was probably one of the most tough things to handle, to try to be professional inside the Judiciary Committee meetings, because at times there was a walkout, there was frustration from the legislators, call them right. I mean, it was a really tough year or session to be on that committee. But what would it have been had there not been conservatives in that committee, had not been there to confront the problems we were having? What would it have been like? And yes, we did not get all of our legislation out, and the strategy worked his part. We signed out more bills at the end than you can imagine, but the controversial ones, and as you know, the senator got, wasn't anything for him to sign those bills out he wanted out, but that's not the way you do business. You need debate. We were willing to be there. We were willing to meet those late nights, go through lunches, and it was a true concern. I'm very concerned because of the people that needed bills to come out that could never get before the committee, and they would come and sit for hours and then him cancel the meeting.
Yeah.
And get ready, and it sit all morning, and he'd say, "We'll come back in the afternoon,"
and then you don't come back.
Those.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At one point, he even lost control of his committee. Well, at one time it got kind of dangerous in there. He wasn't gaveling people down when he should on a controversial issue. But then there were other times where he was clearly calling things in a biased way, and the people on the committee just got up and walked out because they were disgusted with the way he was doing things. So anyway,
right, and he was called out. They called him out on it, and that was the moment when I said, "Look what you've done." That's when I told him, I said, "You have pushed it. We've tolerated a lot of things," and anyone that was there would have heard that conversation if they were standing there, because it was between he and I, but it was not.
Yeah, it
wasn't in a whisper.
Yeah,
it was a conversation. We were sitting on the bench when the walkout happened, and we can't even do legislation because what you're doing, and he truly ran the committee that way this year. It was a major disappointment and frustration, by the way, that we had, and I have to make no bones about it. And it was a conversation. He did it in public, so he's going to, have to understand we've had frustration.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on him. I do not, but I think it's one thing with the character and behavior that should not happen in a committee.
Yeah. Senator Linda Collins-Smith, thank you so much for interviewing, coming on, giving us your impression of the session. We do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and please keep up